Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I wanted to spread the good word of our Lord and Savior, Tornado Shot. Tornado Shot here is proving in this build, and in many others I'd say, that you don't have to go Barrage for endgame single target at the moment. So this character that I've been playing is the Death's Opus Assassin. Death's Opus, not a very hard bow to get. A few other pieces and bits and pieces from the set might be a bit harder to get and more expensive, especially like the Sin's Rebirth. But the point I'm making here is, with a few additional arrows from the Death's Opus especially, you can get some pretty damn nice single target happening on Tornado Shot, because the more arrows you have, the more single target damage you have, since you can hit your single target with more of your secondary projectiles. You can check that out on the Tornado Shot wiki, and there's a pretty good guide that Ziggy D has put up on there of a video as well, and you'll see exactly the mechanics of how a Tornado Shot works. So long story short, it's actually pretty damn solid for single target when you can stand still and do some good DPS and position your Tornado Shots correctly. The Phoenix kill here and the Phoenix runs I've done on this character were actually probably some of the easiest Phoenix kills I could possibly imagine, because you're almost always safe at a distance throwing out Tornado Shots, doing some really good single target and killing the Phoenixes almost always. So it ends up being a really smooth playstyle and kill. On top of that, this character did manage to kill, or clear I should say, Hall of Grandmasters fairly uneventfully. Died a few times, but that's to be expected. The bleeds actually go really well against the super heavy tanky characters and pretty much shit on everything else there is in the Hall of Grandmasters. If I was CI, it'd be a lot easier, and just spec'd a bit better for it, it'd be a lot easier. So it's viable for Hall of Grandmasters, but not great anyway. Obviously, Chimera, not the greatest example of your single target on this character specifically, because we don't have any bleed or poison against him, and that's a large part of my build obviously, but even then it's still pretty good for single target against him. So if you're more of a Pathfinder or an Inquisitor, you can definitely viably use Tornado Shot for your single target skills, and that means you only need one setup for your single target and your AoE, and that makes a few things slightly easier and more comfortable, and Tornado Shot cleans up pretty damn well for the AoE. As you can see here, the adds are very well capable of being bled and poisoned, and that's really quite easy. So the whole challenge of this fight for me is basically killing the Chimera within a few seconds, pop all my flasks, and more or less face tank him, and it is very much doable. Most of the Chimera kills I've done at this point were pretty much deathless, and that's not too bad for a life-based character with not the greatest defenses, I guess, having to face tank, because I did build this character largely to be a ranged guy, and you'll see that in the shaper attempts and all that, so I didn't build him to really face tank. He doesn't have point blank and things like that, so you could obviously have more damage if you chucked a point blank into your build and wanted to face tank things, but my damage at range is more than adequate in my opinion, so I haven't been doing too much face tanking and point blanking. And you can see that single target can be very good. For Minotaur specifically, I should mention I'm wearing snake bites, so I keep up my frenzy charges manually and then poison him, because he's bleed immune but not poison immune, and since he's bleed immune, you kind of cannot get poison through the assassin ascendancies against him. So I wear snake bites for 100% poison, and you can see the damage there was pretty good. So everything in the game up until let's say Hydra, Chimera, and probably Shaper falls over to this type of build really easily and smoothly, and to Tornado Shot especially. So Tornado Shot's very viable as a single target, but for a few of those fights it becomes a lot harder. For Shaper specifically, I haven't gone the full face tank method, and I haven't really scaled my DPS into oblivion, meaning I have to do a lot of dodging because I'm always at range, and that lowers my DPS time. If I was just in pure melee range, if I was CI for example on this build, which is very doable, then the kill would be a lot faster, because I'd just stand right next to him, drop my Wither Totem, he'd try and melee me, and I'd kill him in probably about 5 to 10 seconds. Instead, I do have to run around a lot and only attack every few seconds. I'm not keeping up my blood rage as much as I should, and I'm mismanaging flasks on these runs. But that said, I did manage to kill Shaper 4 times on this character, I think, and all of them were pretty damn good. It's just that it's not completely face roll. You do have to actually play the game a bit, and it's kind of how I like to play the game, but obviously it's not as strong as a pure DPS, run in, obliterate him, and carry on with your life sort of playstyle, which a lot of builds are capable of doing with their damage these days. So I do show you a full phase 2 right there, and a full phase 3 as well here, I think. So you have to do quite a bit of dodging, a bit of ball placement. That's why we can't really face tank, especially, well, basically because I don't have Valpact in the build. So I didn't take Valpact because I didn't need it, and I don't like Valpact, and I'd rather play without it. You can by all means spend a few points, get Valpact, and that means you'll probably be able to face tank most bosses if you really want to, but I opted out of that, and I also died right here because I'm a noob. That's not really important. Like, most of these kills aren't too important how well they went or what I'm showing you. It's more or less a proof of concept of Tornado Shot being pretty damn solid for single target, and a very viable alternative to Barrage. You can see here some add DPS as well. Means you don't have to have a separate single target and AoE skill, and I did accidentally let Zana die, so then I have to just face tank the adds. Like I said, Valpact, probably CI as this build. There's really not much reason to not do it if you want the strongest possible sort of Tornado Shot character, but I was very happy with the life-based version that I built. Almost hit 6k life with a Belly of the Beast, and mapped pretty damn comfortably and smoothly with it. So it was a very nice tier 15 and below sort of map build, and then really good for most tier 16s, and I never took it to Uber Zeri because, well, you can't Tornado Shot the mirror in this split phase, and I really didn't want to cave into just being Barrage. So I haven't touched Uber Zeri, but you certainly could with a skill swap. Now, I do believe I've covered just about everything in the previous video, but I'll go over almost everything I can think of once again, just real quick. I'll try and sum it up pretty damn quickly. Death's Opus, we're using it because it's got 2 additional arrows and a lot of extra crit multi, and it's got decent crit. You can use a Reach of the Council, but I think it creates a slightly different playstyle and way you build your character. It's certainly doable. You probably wouldn't use GMP, instead you'd use crit strikes, and you might have less poison damage but more bleed damage. I don't know, I'm not a fucking expert. Death's Opus is fine, and I went with that. Steel Rings do a very large amount of additional damage for our Death's Opus, so try and get some of those. The chest I used in the end was a Belly of the Beast because I really wanted to squeeze out more life, and that's what I did. I used a 2 secondary shot projectiles for Tornado Shot helm. Without that, you will fire off 3 secondary projectiles when you fire your skill. With it, you do 5. So it's just a bit of a better spread. It shouldn't really affect your single target, just some better map clear, which also isn't that strictly necessary. So I think you should be able to get by without this helm enchant. But that said, I have not yet tested it. Drill Neck, we're running that because we have a 100% pierce chance, and that's 100% proj damage, which scales both the bleed and the poison and double dips, which is why we use a pierce gem in our setup. The entire setup is over here on the left. The bandits are there too. Currently, I've been running, for the most part, almost always Grace and Herald of Ash as my 2 skills, or auras. You can also swap in Hatred over Grace whenever you feel like it, and an Ice Golem for good measure. Cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, increased duration is your cast when damage taken setup, with a Vile Haste whenever you want it, and with a totem attached to increased duration, faster casting a spell totem, gives you a shitload more poison damage in the long run. A large part of your leech comes from Zeri's Promise, the other part will come from Blood Rage, and I'm running a Silver Flask instead of something like a Dying Sun, because it's a lot cheaper and I do like the attack and movement speed it provides. You can of course shove a Dying Sun in this build, and that will increase your single target damage even more. Now when I say that, I do mean because every single one of your Tornado Shots here, the secondary projectile can hit a single target at least once per arrow. So you have, how many arrows? 7 arrows. That means 7 secondary projectiles can hit a target, which means poison scaling is pretty damn good with this sort of build, even though you're using GMP for less damage. There's not much else to mention. Sin's Rebirth, insane. I wouldn't say it's necessary, but very good for the build. And when you're leveling this character, poison and bleed nodes first, in my opinion, and then the power charge ones. This is where we get almost all of our power charge sustain. You don't need any others. And the tree, more or less, I think, optimized. You can probably drop some of this shit, and if you get more int on your gear, you can also drop this, and you can go over here, but in the end, you don't really get that much more life. It's barely any better. I decided this was better because it was also providing me with additional int. On Jules, you're looking for life, damage, projectile damage, and crit multi primarily, but damage and projectile damage is ideal with a bit of extra life. Attack speed's not bad too. All in all, this character was very solid. I enjoyed playing it a lot. I would probably take it even higher than 91, but I guess it's time for us to move on to the next character, which is Spark. So Tornado Shot, very viable as a single target. You don't have to conform and cave to Barrage strictly. And I do recommend you guys try out some Tornado Shot in the future with single target. The more arrows, the merrier, so try and keep that in mind, scaling it. And yeah, that's it for this character, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.